The convergence of our voices is the song of our beauty. Many voices will speak here, the song woven through diverse notes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crone Chronicles. And today it's my pleasure to speak to river keeper and water keeper Lorien Cadier. So, welcome, Lorien. And
Thank you.
how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I think you summed it up. Probably a river guardian now. I feel myself as a river guardian, someone who's passionate about waterways and has been all my life. So yes, I probably river guardian now and a speaker for rivers. I think we're all feeling now we have to speak for them. So yes, a river speaker maybe too.
Aha. So, you have a website that
Yes.
describe the website.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that website is River Wisdom, riverwisdom.net. And really, the motivation for doing that was the celebration of World Rivers Day. And each year, as we've gone along, I have become very interested in what people are doing around the world. I mean, thousands of people in many different countries to celebrate World Rivers Day. And of course, it was started in Canada
Yes.
uh, by Mark Angelo, who's the great river activist. And I came up with different things, and maybe we could talk about some of the things that I've done in the past. But this year, I thought, well, what about if I get a website together, if it's only for me, although I think a lot of other people have looked at it, um, to bring all this information together that I've got, which is about honoring honoring rivers, committing to protecting them, but at the same time, with the practical solutions and resources there that people can check out, see what they can do to help. So, along with that sacred duty that we have, if you like, to protect rivers and honor them back to, as you will agree, Gail, to our ancients, it was to put all that together.
Hmm. And World Rivers Day is March, is it?
No, World Rivers Day is in September. I
Ah.
think it's the 3rd September. So that it was launched in September. And what I did at the same time was I created a Facebook group. Now, I only really use Facebook for groups and you know, a lot of the dearest people in the world, including yourself, I think, and my friends on Facebook, I just use it for groups. So I thought, well, I'll start a group. And so I started a group. I think it was the day or 2 days before Rivers Day. And all these people came into it. And I think we're now up to 201 members. And we flooded this group with pictures and stories about rivers. So that's been a really very happy outcome alongside the website. You know.
Yeah. And what are the some of the practical things that you do?
Absolutely. Well, I really operate in two areas in the UK. With those of you that are not familiar with it, the southern part of the UK has amazingly nearly all the chalk streams in the world. There are only about 200 chalk streams in the world, and I think there's something like 177 around Hampshire, which is where my mother lived, and I've spent quite a bit of time with her and my family here. And so that was really where I started with the practical work. And we have rivers trusts in the UK, and they are regional. So the Wessex Rivers Trust covers an area which is the old, if you like, region of Wessex, going back to ancient times, are parts of Wiltshire, Hampshire, maybe just a little bit into Dorset. And they asked for volunteers, and I'm part of the educational team. So what we do is we take parties of school children out to the river during school class times. It's part of their curriculum. And we teach them a bit about water safety. We teach them something about the language of the river. what is the name, the tributary, the flow, the berm, which is a bend in the river, etc., etc. We might do some things to get them to measure the river, the depth of the river, the width of the river, the flow of the river. We use kind of doggy biscuits to do that to them, to measure the flow. And then, most importantly, because this is the bit they all adore, we do river dipping. So that involves the children, usually in their welly boots, going into the river, using a net to do your traditional, kick sample, get a net and come back to a sorting tray. And there they can look for the invertebrates that are in the river. And you're
Oh,
in that area, we're talking about freshwater shrimp, mollusks, caddisfly, all of these kind of things, little snails. And so they've got microscopes and they can look at that. So that's really the work, some of the work that I've done in Wessex. And additionally, we have a wonderful project, it's just coming to an end, unfortunately, called Watercress and Winterbournes. Now, winterbournes are chalk streams that dry up in the winter, and this is up in the northern part of Hampshire, and various parts of this project, which is river restoration, but the part that I'm involved in is called Tales from the Riverbank. And what I've done is taken oral histories of people who have worked maybe all on the river all their life. We've got watercress growers here, huge watercress growers, because of the purity of our chalk streams.
ah,
So where the springs come up, they've been there for, oh, I don't know, over 150 years. And interviews say the chap that's worked there for 35 years, or the fly fisherman, or the man who is the head of the Wild Trout Trust,
ah.
um, the lady who's got a toad patrol. I mean, these wonderful
Oh,
people.
yeah,
I mean,
I love
they
the
all,
idea. I
yeah.
love the idea of a toad patrol.
I know. 2,000 toads in every year are saved by this team of villagers with high-vis jackets, bringing them
Oh.
into. It's just wonderful. The pictures are phenomenal. So I've been doing that, and all of those they're recorded. And all of those recordings will go into a film and sound archive and will
Ah.
be kept for posterity
Oh,
about.
lovely. Yeah, yeah.
So that's the part in Wessex. I live in now with my family in London, and I do the River Thames is very important to me, and I do citizen water testing on
Mm.
the River Thames. So every week I go and I test for phosphate and ammonia, sometimes nitrates, in the place on the Thames, which is at the confluence of the River Brent,
Mhm.
named after the goddess Brigid, and the River Thames, which I always like to think of as Isis, Tamesis. Um,
Yes.
and I test there, and I'm part of an organisation called River Action. And what we're looking to do is to find evidence. Unfortunately, we find lots of it, of pollution in the river, and that translates into an action against the water companies. But that,
Ah, yeah.
quite complicated and very legal. But
Hmm.
so that's the breadth of what I am doing practically for
Yeah,
rivers.
yeah. Uh, but you also do some really wonderful walks to find the source of a river. So you did one for the Thames?
I did, yeah, 200 miles, with my wonderful husband who accompanies me and helps. But yeah, absolutely, from the source. I think this was now this is a few years back when I was looking for something to do for World Rivers Day, and I've always been really interested in the sources of rivers. They seem like very sacred places, and if you ever go to a place that's got a Vauclusian spring, um, in England, we've got many of those where they're just coming directly out of the water with enormous force. You feel that power that of the water there, just like a sacred site, if you like, with
Mm.
Neolithic monuments. It's the same. It's been pouring its water forever. So the Thames, that was it. I thought, well, the Thames is a river that's very important to me. So started at the source of the Thames. I know the purists will say there's a dispute about where the source of the Thames is, but we started from Kemble in Gloucestershire. And over the course of 3 months, we walked 200 miles.
Wow.
And yeah, it was quite incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, the source was dry. We did it initially for charity, for Bliss, for babies born prematurely, for the month. It was like walk 60 miles in August, and we had t-shirts on, and it was amazing. People were giving us money as we walked along. Amazing support. But the source was dry, and we had to wait for almost a mile before we saw, the little reeds and a trickle of water. And what I like to do is to take some water from that source and carry it. I sing to it,
Wow.
and I take it all the way down to the point where the Thames became tidal. And I do a very small ritual to dedicate that water to that point in the river, that it might be clean, that it might run pure for us and for our descendants.
Lovely. Yes. And so you would take breaks in between your walking. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what we did is we did it in 2 week periods.
Ah,
So
yeah.
we were away for a week each time, and then in days down. Right. It was just the most magnificent thing to do. And when you realize that tiny trickle, and then you're standing, at the Thames estuary of this
Yeah.
magnificent river. And I think then all the books that have been written about the Thames, they just spring off the page, because you've seen it grow, you've seen it become navigable, you've seen its vegetation change, what's beside it, how the people use the river. It really was a wonderful experience, and I think I've become a bit addicted now to trying to find the sources of rivers and walk them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So is there difficulty in walking the length of a river as far as access?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And with the Thames, I mean, there is a Thames path,
Ah,
which is probably one of the best river paths, I don't know, certainly in the UK.
mhm.
And it gives you a lot of access to the river front. But then as you get into, well, it's got to be the wealthier areas where people have
Mm.
got riverfront properties, you find yourself either being directed to the other bank of the river or coming round the back of these very, very large houses. Um, as you get closer to the estuary, that obviously is industrial use. So there's big plants and factories that you've got to walk behind. But what was very interesting is I've recently walked the River Stour, which goes from Wiltshire down into Dorset, and access there was almost impossible. I think it's about 66 miles. And really, I think probably it was only about 5 to 10 miles of that we walked by the bank. And the Stour Valley Way, which we thought would go by the side of the bank, was actually going up in the hills around the river, and quite high. So you were looking down on the river, and the river had been made into lakes, either for ornamental reasons or drawn off for fishing or whatever. So access was very, very limited.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
It really is a shame. I mean, we're talking something like about only 8% of the river banks, certainly in England and Wales, are accessible. And, I'd really like to see that changed. I really
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
Mm.
It's probably similar in many places around the world, I would think.
I think it is. When I've spoken to my friends in America,
Mhm.
they've told me that a lot of rivers are not respected. And there isn't even a glimmer of a path. I mean, the fact that we had the Stour Valley Way was a blessing, really, although it wasn't very well marked. But I think there's many rivers that are neglected, and they're not thought of as a place where people would want to walk, and in
Mhm.
many places, not even a navigable waterway.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I'm thinking of the Slocan River in the Kootenays in British Columbia, and there's a very nice. It's the rail trail that goes along the river. So you do have a long walk along that river, which is really nice.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there is something, very meditative about walking along a river
Hmm.
and watching its development. I mean, it can be exhilarating too. Last week I was in West Wales, and I'd realized that the place I was staying with a family member was very near the source of the River Severn. Now, the River Severn, I think, it says it's the longest river in the UK, not the Thames. I think it's something like 207 miles instead of 200. And it does have the Severn Way, but its source is in the Cambrian Mountains. And I never thought that I would be able to get there, and realized then that I was very close. But of course, the weather here has been atrocious. Welsh rain as well. It was very, very heavy. And we went into the Haffron Forest, and the river was raging, and it was so powerful, but overwhelming in many ways with the rain as well. And we got up to a huge waterfall, and it was very evident that we weren't going to make it. That the light was giving out, and the rain was very heavy, so we had to go back. So it was exhilarating, but disappointing too.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, So, what would you say was your impetus to start working with the rivers?
Okay. Um, I think it goes back really to my childhood. And I had the privilege of growing up in Dorset, in one of the southern counties of the UK. And I grew up literally on the banks of the River Stour, the river that I mentioned that we walked earlier this year. And the river was always ever present for me. And it was a place that was very magical. It was in the days when children were given a lot of freedom to play.
Mm.
But we were always told that we couldn't go in the river. There was what we call a suspension bridge, which we thought was great fun because you could move it as you went across. We were told we could play in the water meadows. We could go minnowing like with our little jam jars, but we couldn't go in the river because of the weeds, and also there was a weir. And so it became a kind of attractive place. We always were in awe of it. And actually, we did obey the instruction because you could see that it could be dangerous,
Yeah.
but it was ever present. And alongside that, my own father, he was one of these people who swims 365 days a year.
Oh, one of those brave people.
One of those brave people, you might say slightly mad, who will go out on Christmas Day. And he was always in the water. And Dorset, known as the Jurassic Coast, we have extraordinary beaches. And he would take me down from a very young age. I mean, I'm thinking as young as 2, because I learned to swim when I was 2. And he would swim out with me on his back. And then he just turned over and he let me swim. I believe this is one way, if you're very brave. But there was that relationship with the water because he had it. So I think it came from that childhood playing, maybe sort of, I don't think maybe as a child you always understand that concept of beauty, but
Mhm.
it was there and fascination. So I think it does derive from that, Gail. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. And is there something that you'd like to talk about that we haven't mentioned already?
Well, I think probably one of the things that we haven't talked about is the sacred nature of rivers.
Mm.
And I've been doing a lot of work. I did a talk for Obod on when rivers were goddesses. And on my website as well, I've put quite a lot of the myth and folklore attached to rivers. And most of our rivers, and I don't know if it's the same in Canada, they have gods, goddesses associated with them. And we know this in many ways because we see it from the time when, you know, writing came certainly to the UK, that it was described, you know, by the Romans, who named those goddesses. And then later in about the 15th century, a chap called Michael Drayton put together something called the Polyolbion, and he went around collecting oral stories about rivers. And incredible book, which is now in Wells Cathedral Library, where he illustrated, he had an illustrator who illustrated the rivers with their spirits. So we know that our ancestors valued water. They didn't just, I mean, obviously they valued it because they knew it was essential to their life and their health, um, for cleanliness, for cooking, for fishing, all of those things. But I think as well, the fascination was there certainly around springs and sources of water rather magically arising. Springs that never froze, for example, and one of the most famous of those is Blixmead, which is the spring where they think attracted our ancestors to Stonehenge. It's very close. It never froze, so it meant that the animals were drawn there in the winter. It also had a very interesting algae there that was fluorescent when it was in the water, so lots of magical properties there. So I think they treated and honoured those sources. They treated and honoured those waterways. My personal view as well is that it had something to do with the act of birth, because they saw that babies were born, came from water. And obviously we have all those fecund statues of goddesses from antiquity. So I'm very interested in all of those myths and folklore around rivers. And I think if we understand that, then we can honor our rivers, if you like, the spirit of them. And I think when I said to you right at the beginning, you know, I regard myself as a speaker for rivers now. You understand that there's a huge movement to give legal rights to rivers,
Mm.
and this has happened, you know, in New Zealand, I believe in Ecuador. It's certainly now happened for two or three rivers in England, the Parrett in Sussex, and I think the Testanich in Hampshire. And sort of it's all part of that understanding that the river, if the river flows clear, if we speak for the river, if we speak on its behalf, if we speak because we want clean water, which is essential to our lives, we give rivers a voice. And I guess that is a spirit for me. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And your Druidry has also been a big part of your call to work with the waters, hasn't it?
Very much so, girl. Yeah, absolutely. I think the two have gone hand in hand, because I think when you go through, I mean, I'm a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, and we go through a course to be a bard, to be an ovate, to be a druid. And in that journey, we are understanding our connection with nature. You
Hmm.
know, we walk with nature, and the fact that we are connected to all things. So a lot of our work is outside. We meet outside in nature for our seasonal festivals. So for me, I think the places that I was drawn, obviously the forest too, but the places that I was often drawn for my rituals, if you like, my meditations were river sites, you know, spring sites, and I think the two things very much had a synergy for me, working with those elements. So it was joyous, really, to discover that.
Hmm. Okay, well, thank you so much for this talk. It was really interesting. And I was thinking, I wonder if there could be a project
Thank you, Gail.
in Canada to find out maybe the indigenous names for some of the rivers and the stories behind those. I've never seen anything like that, but it would be really neat to start something. Not that I know how to, but
I
um,
think it would be wonderful, and maybe contacting Mark Angelo or finding out. I mean, I don't know if you have Rivers Trust, but it's people who are guardians of rivers, or again, linguistically, yeah, you could
yeah,
do something like that.
yeah,
It'd be very
mhm,
interesting indeed.
yeah. Okay, well, it was a great pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Pleasure.